This is possibly the largest retro handheld in the world. But the question is, will it still fit in your pocket? Let me introduce you to this thing because I've never seen anything quite like it before. This is Pixeldarts by a company called Dartsnut. Now, you probably wouldn't have heard of them because, well, the product itself is fairly new, but they're the same company as Chestnut, which is a much better pun, by the way. And they've been creating these smart chessboards and chess computers since 2021. Now they're branching out into the pub game market with Pixeldarts, which is an electronic dartboard with a few tricks up its sleeve, like suction-tipped darts for when you want all of the shame of missing the board, but none of the redecorating. And they've made this look like a giant Game Boy. So what you've got here is a Game Boy that you can throw things at, as finally it's a console that understands my relationship with Dark Souls. I don't know why they've made it like this, why they've made it look like a Game Boy. Is it an aesthetic thing? Is it purely a gimmick? I'm not really sure, but you know what? I do like it. But this isn't an emulation device. This is a proper dartboard, not regulation-sized dartboard, but good enough to hook up in your living room and have some fun with. It's been designed for wall mounting in the same way that your TV is designed for wall mounting, with holes for one of those VESA plates on the back, although you do need to get quite a big one, I've found. Now, I'm not really one for pub games. I prefer any social awkwardness to come without a scoring system. All the pub games I've tried seem to require a particular stance, a particular way of standing, and any game where I have to think about how I'm standing immediately becomes sport, and I'm out. And I'm no good at them either. I mean, in darts, they say just aim for the triple 20. If I had £1 for every time somebody had said just aim for the triple 20, I'd have enough money to pay somebody to aim for the triple 20 for me. And it's not just darts. I'm just rubbish at it, all of it. The last time I played pool, the cue ball ended up in a different city. But this particular device intrigued me, partly because of the aesthetics, obviously, and partly because it left me with a lot of questions. What is playing with a dartboard like this actually like? Do the suction darts actually stick? Is it actually safe to mount on walls? And in terms of technology, this is actually really interesting as well, because it includes a Raspberry Pi 4B. Each dart has got its own embedded sensor chip. The board recognises who threw what, exactly where, and in real time, which makes you think that it's silently judging you every time a dart shoots past the board and takes out the cat. I wanted to test whether or not it was reliable. Does the tech function without errors, or is it some sort of gimmick that actually fails in practice? Along with the classic darts, you've got games like Splash and Hostage Rescue as well. And we'll get into some of these a little bit later on. And you've actually got a Nerf blaster compatibility as well. So it finally bridges that gap between gentle indoor throwing and a full-scale office insurrection. You can also hook up your controller to this and load up a Pico 8 game and play through any game in their library. In fact, I would question whether or not this is actually the perfect device for Pico 8. Let's find out. Pixeldarts by Dartsnut could be the most because we could bit of technology since somebody put a toaster on the internet, but for some reason I quite like it. And after all of this testing, there was one thing I found that actually did consistently fail in practice, and that was me. And I'm not even Bluetooth compatible. But how is Pixeldarts in the real world? What's it like to play on? Does it fall apart as soon as you look on it? We have to ask a very serious question here. Is Pixeldarts by Dartsnut hitting the bullseye, or have they missed the board entirely? Now, the note that I've got here says that I need to start with an ethical obligation, so, save the whales? I don't know. I've also got to tell you that this board was sent to me by Dartsnut for the purposes of review, but they don't have any editorial control. No money has changed hands, no hands have changed money, and no change is as good as a rest. Sorry, I'm a little bit pleased with that one. It's straight out of the Two Ronnies playbook. And if you don't know who the Two Ronnies are, then just go and look up 4 Candles on YouTube as soon as this video's over. So, the Pixeldarts is huge, and I don't mean popular, I mean it is huge. When Dartsnut first contacted me, I thought they'd be sending, a little kind of desk-sized frame which I could put on a desk and throw some darts at. And I thought, okay, that's really fun. And it'll play Pico 8, and that'll be fantastic. A great thing to base a video on, fun thing to show off in a video. This thing is massive. I mean, we've had to build an outhouse just to find somewhere to put it. Okay, look, I might be being just a little bit facetious here, but it is big and it is clever. And it's a little bit heavy as well, weighing in at about 6.5 kilograms. For that, you get a unit which is about 62 centimeters in height, 45 centimeters in width. No, if you're trying to answer that question still, it won't fit in your pocket. Its brain is a Raspberry Pi 4B Model B, and it's got 1 gigabyte of SD RAM and 16 gig of internal storage. But it doesn't really need that much. You have a single mono speaker, a built-in microphone, Wi-Fi 5 and Bluetooth 5, as well as a D-pad and buttons that are really just there so that you can navigate the system rather than actually playing games with them. And whilst I suspect that this won't appeal to traditional darts purists, it does have this unique design, which is a conversation starter if nothing else. And this is something that I think that you would pull out at parties, not just to play darts with, but perhaps to take it in turns on a Pico 8 game or two. It does feel very much like a device for when your friends come round. And as I've said before, you could actually mount this on a wall, but some people will be rightly scared off by that just because of the sheer weight of this thing. There are other options though, and I found myself buying a relatively cheap speaker stand from Amazon and then getting a VESA mount for it. And actually, I blew through a few different VESA mounts because a lot of them are quite small and they've got quite small holes. You need one with big holes on as well. But it's the sort of thing that you would use to mount a television onto a speaker stand if you were setting up a mobile karaoke disco van in the early 2000s. The speaker stand actually makes it really quite portable too. Heavy, but portable. And I could see myself setting this up in the garden on a nice day, when we're having a barbecue, when we're having some friends round and all, getting to take it in turns with games like darts or maybe even something a little bit more quirky. But this does run on mains electrical power, so you might want to consider a long power cable as well, if that's what you plan to do. Now, of course, being a screen, the last thing that you're going to want to do is throw sharp darts at it. And one of the benefits of this system is that the darts that come with it have these little rubber suction cups, which is great for when people might walk in front of you and you don't want to commit murder. These are little plastic darts with cardboard flights that you actually attach yourself when the board arrives. And there's not actually that much weight to them, but they are still quite comfortable to hold, and I found them easy enough to throw. But you know what? I've got to admit that darts has never been my game. I'm much more of a fan of Trivial Pursuit, and the only thing you have to throw in Trivial Pursuit is a tantrum over a missed bit of pie. Of course, you might find yourself throwing a tantrum over these darts as well. Now, look, most of the time when you use these things, they are perfectly fine. But I have had a few issues that have cropped up. Firstly, the flights are made of cardboard, and like I said, you assemble them yourself out of the box. They have this tendency to fly off when you're least expecting it. It can be really frustrating because it can break up the flow of a game. The other thing is that the suction cups really need to be wet or at least damp to give it the best chance of sticking to the board. It does stick, it actually sticks quite well. Most people might just lick the end and then throw it, but that becomes a lot less appealing when you've been playing this with lots of people, or if you're playing it outside and it just ends up falling in the mud. Some sort of tip moistening apparatus may be needed in those circumstances, and I really didn't think that I would find myself saying that today. But these darts have got something special inside as well, like a Kinder Surprise with a little toy. You don't know what those are in the States, do you? Because they don't have them. Anyway, look, each one contains a little chip that's got an identity all of its own based on the colour of the dart. And that means that when you throw the dart, the game knows it was you. quite apart from not being able to hide the embarrassment of a dodgy throw, the Pixeldarts board will actually recognise which team you're on and calculate the scores accordingly, meaning that technically 2 people could throw a dart at the same time and have the right scores recorded. Now, I don't have any friends, so obviously I had to simulate this when testing it out. And actually, it works very well. Although you don't need it for doing what this board is mostly set out for, which of course is playing darts. It only really comes into effect in some of the other games, but when it does, the board was able to recognise the darts and add the right score onto the right team, which doesn't sound too taxing unless you've tried to do it manually after a few pints and end up giving 180 points to a garden gnome. But of course, at the heart of it are all of the games that you can play, and most of these are a derivation of darts, funnily enough. You've got one called Cricket, where you have to hit certain numbers on a darts board in the right sequence. You've got a golf one where you've got to hit the hole to get the ball into the hole. You've got one called Hostage, where you've got to throw your darts at bad guys in order to rescue the hostage. And that's actually quite a good game, quite a good example of 2 people playing at the same time. And the scores on that are collated between which colour dart hits the board and kills the guy. That's this system working to its best ability. And it's in those games where you see the simultaneous dart recognition really come into its own. But it's a system that you just don't need on a normal darts game where you're taking it in turns anyway. The classic 501 and 301 darts are, let's face it, why you bought this board in the first place, and that works really well. I did once or twice have an unfortunate throw where the board actually didn't recognise the dart. And I think this is probably something that you kind of have to accept as a limitation of the technology, perhaps in the same way that you would have to accept a dart hitting a metal part of a regular dartboard. One thing I can't really speak to is the difference between this and a normal dartboard, because I don't play darts. What I can say is I love the tech. Look, give me a virtual golf simulator and I will turn into Tiger Woods for a weekend. But you will never find me actually going out on a fairway. So the one thing that I can't really say is whether or not this works reliably or whether it's just my lack of ability which is shining through here. Having said that, a few times where I did try to play darts as a child, I was absolutely awful. And I did seem to have a much better hit rate with this system and a greatly reduced injury count as well. But if you don't have a penchant for dart throwing, perhaps your children have a penchant for Nerf guns, and perhaps you'd like to direct that further in a more, because there's a lot of words in this one, isn't there? Perhaps you'd like to direct that further in a more positive way. Well, one of the things that you get in this pack is a set of Nerf bullets that will work with the board. In order to test this out, I actually had to go and buy a Nerf gun. At 47-year-old and with no child in tow, I clearly had to pretend this was a present for a non-existent nephew, which didn't make things easy because non-existent Nerf guns are actually a lot more difficult to get hold of. Firstly, if you're going to be using Nerf guns, I would suggest having the board a little bit lower down from what they say in the manual. It might not be possible, of course, if you mount this to a wall, but if you're using the speaker stand solution that I mentioned earlier, then it is entirely possible, in fact, very easy to do. Aiming with the Nerf gun is actually more awkward than I thought, and I did find that the darts would bounce off the board more often than not. However, over time, I seem to get the hang of it a little bit. So if you're happy to work through those frustrations, you can actually have quite a good time with this unit. But this dartboard can do something else as well, which modern gamers might find attractive. And I'll tell you all about that after a word from our sponsor. Because this video is sponsored by me. And I just want to say that if you are enjoying these videos and if you like what I do and if you'd like to help me make more of these videos, then please do consider joining as a member. There's two ways of doing it now. There's Patreon, which has got there's a link below for both of them, in fact, or you can join on YouTube as a channel member now. Now, you don't get any real extra benefits either way, but you will always get my eternal gratitude. And I'm going to try and push for about 300 paid members on Patreon. I don't know if it's even possible. It's a pipe dream at this point, but it would be amazing to do. Currently, I've got 7. But at that point, I can take this full time and I can dedicate all of my time to making videos, not just for your entertainment, but hopefully to help people with their retro handheld needs as well, with tips and tutorials and maybe deeper dives into those questions that everybody asks, but that nobody seems to get a proper answer to. So do join if you can. And if you can't, then please pester somebody else until they can join instead. And whilst you've been signing up in droves, our dartboard has transformed. Because not only can this play darts, but it can also play other games as well. It's not an emulation device. You're not going to get it to play PlayStation games or PSP or Postman's Knock, but you can get it to play one particular system that actually does incredibly well. Pico 8. Because this thing's got a Raspberry Pi in it, it is actually the perfect unit to play Pico 8 at scale. The screen is exactly the right size, exactly the right pixel count. You can attach a Bluetooth controller, and when you're fed up with darts at the end of the day, this is the perfect switch for any barbecue that you might be holding. Instead of people throwing things around, you can challenge them to play a level of your favorite Pico 8 game, or just scroll through and let people choose what they want. You can hand the controller onto the next gamer as soon as one person's level is over, exactly the same way that we used to do when we were kids. The implementation on here is really smart, and you've got Wi-Fi, of course, which lets you load in whichever game you want. If you're a bit of a coder, you could actually go so far as to create your own Pico 8 game yourself, like this one, which I'm playing right now. This is Mr. Stevens' Dead End, which is being played on the Pixeldarts board, my own game. For any gamers out there, this is actually a bit of a bonus, but I wouldn't suggest buying this board just for the Pico 8 stuff alone. It's a little bit too big, a little bit too cumbersome for that. Of course, with Pico 8, you're also going to need an internet connection. Any wireless connection will do. You've got a hotspot on your phone, that's going to do the job. But you'll also need Wi-Fi to make sure that your board is updated and to connect to the app. Because virtually everything that you'll want to do in terms of setup and management can be done on the app itself, and it's much easier than trying to navigate through settings on the unit. Use it to install and uninstall games, to update the console, and of course, if they release new content for this system, it's going to be on that app, and that's how you'll load it onto the thing. So that is pretty much a must-have. So where does this leave us? Well, the best argument for this board is that if you're somebody who, often has friends and family around, or you've got a big family yourself, maybe a lot of kids, and you want a device that the family can congregate around, that isn't maybe as passive as sitting with a normal video game, then this is one of those devices that will help you stop the scroll. If each family get-together consists of 30 people just standing around looking at their phones, then this really is the kind of thing that's going to change that atmosphere for you. As for the technology itself, I'm actually quite impressed with it. Sure, I had a few problems here and there, and I'm not entirely sure whether that's down to my ability or lack thereof, or the technology itself. But let's face it, suction darts have been around for quite some time now. The chips inside those darts are actually phenomenal. When you consider, how much work must have gone into producing this thing, and all of the work that the board is doing to check which one is which when you're throwing it, that's quite an impressive achievement. The main problem you're going to have with this board actually is because of the size. It's where are you going to mount it? Does the wall that you want to put it on actually hold that much weight? There are solutions, of course, like my speaker stand one, but would that fit into your life? For me, actually, the answer is probably not. I have fewer social gatherings than an inmate in solitary confinement. But for the right person, I can see this being the centre of many get-togethers. That's what I think anyway, and I would love to know what you think in the comments below. But that's it for this video. Thank you ever so much for coming along. I hope you've enjoyed it. I hope you'll find that this video hits the bullseye for you, even if some of the jokes don't. And all that's left to say, I suppose, is that do please come along again next time we sit in our little retro corner. And until then, thanks for watching and happy gaming.